Like most other superheroes, the Fantastic Four wanted to remain anonymous while still being able to save the world. However, their cover was finally blown when they encountered a powerful entity. Defeating him wasn't at all easy, even with their varied powers combined. Can you imagine this entity, which not only unmasked the Fantastic Four to the world, but also served as one of their most formidable opponents? Today, we're going to tell you about one of the most powerful villains in the Marvel Universe who didn't have a long story arc, but is remembered for his act of defiance. His name is Nihill, and he hails from Earth 1610. Let's learn more about him and the story of his encounter with the Fantastic Four, which changed their world forever. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Nihill? What is his backstory? There was a place in the strange fringes of the Marvel multiverse called the End Zone, which is a vast, dying dimension serving as the Ultimate Universe's version of the Negative Zone. This space was caught in the slow and inevitable grip of heat death, with its stars reduced to mere embers and its atmosphere poisoned beyond human understanding. In this fading universe, there exists a species known as the Arthrosians, an insectoid race known for their exceedingly long lifespans. However, they're dying and their solar system is failing. But there's one of them who refuses to give up. An almost terrifying figure of dominance arose named Nihill. Actually, that was his traditional title, which he had acquired hailing from a group of leaders and punishers dating back to the feudal times of his race. When the End Zone universe aged and died, Nihill gathered the vessels of the remaining life forms to form one large conglomerated space station and built a kingdom for himself. To his subjects, Nihill was someone who wielded absolute authority. He decides who dies and who lives to feed his fleet. Nihill sits atop his empire like a god over ruins, ruling with exceptional intellect and strategic cruelty. The End Zone itself is a unique place in the multiverse, but once its time had arrived, the very foundation of the End Zone started to unravel. One by one, its stars collapsed inwards, leaving no concept of day or night. Just a lingering twilight of a dimension was all that was left. Populations that once spanned across planets had died out. Entire cities now floated in space, with their organic and mechanical structures and their inhabitants living on artificial gravity and poisonous air filtration systems. Nihill carved out control among these fragments of his lost civilization. He scavenged the End Zone with extreme precision, taking whatever he could find from other vessels and capturing technology from forgotten species. Most importantly, he didn't flinch twice in executing anyone who dared to threaten his command. He had simply survived much longer than any other leader because he had adapted by embracing the entropy and molding it into strategy. His new abode is not just a battleship, but a mobile world, which is more of a fortress. His people didn't question any of his methods simply because they didn't have the luxury to question anything. After all, in a dying universe where extinction was a daily reality, Nihill offered survival, even if it meant war. The role of Nihill in Marvel Comics. For readers, the story of Nihill began in Ultimate Fantastic Four number 15. At this point in the series, Reed Richards, who was just a teenager and still learning the limits of his mind, had constructed a dimensional gateway. He joined forces with Sue Storm, Ben Grimm, and Johnny Storm, and went on to explore the End Zone in search of more knowledge about alternate realities. But what they found instead was a world on the brink of collapse. When the Fantastic Four visited the End Zone, Nihill almost immediately became alerted to their presence. How could such a young and vibrant life form coming from a universe so fresh and full of energy go unnoticed by Nihill? He immediately started hatching his malicious plans to learn more about the Fantastic Four and their world, and then try to take it over. Perhaps Nihill had identified them as potentially harmless and just eager to explore, and so he quickly sent a calculated and eerie invitation towards the Fantastic Four team. Of the group, Reed, being the most optimistic and an explorer at heart, accepted Nihill's invitation. The other three were reluctant, but ultimately decided to board Nihill's fortress, albeit cautiously. What they saw inside was a completely alien world with some of the strangest machinery they'd ever seen. It was a different world after all. This was Nihill's kingdom. Now that the Fantastic Four had come to visit him, Nihill was actually interested in analyzing them and gathering more information, and for this purpose, he gifted them special helmets so they could communicate. But it was all a devilish ploy. These helmets were secretly rigged with bombs designed by Nibi. These helmets weren't just for translation, but in fact, they were a part of Nihill's larger plans to find a way into the young, energy-rich universe of the Fantastic Four and claim it for himself. The End Zone was dying, with the laws of thermodynamics eating away at everything he knew. Ultimately, his people were hanging on by threads. Nihill was convinced enough to take someone else's world in order to keep them alive and working for him. Nihill activated the hidden bombs in the translation devices, nearly killing Reed and Ben. Their environmental suits were ripped apart and they were left vulnerable in the hostile air of the spaceship. Still, Ben Grimm decided to engage Nihill in hand-to-hand combat and tore one of his wings clean off. This forced the alien ruler to retreat from the scene and regroup. This kind of violence shattered any remaining illusion of diplomacy or talks. The Fantastic Four scrambled hard to escape and managed to retreat in their own vessel, known as the Awesome. Nihill was also down but not finished. Bloodied and furious, he launched his entire fleet after the Fantastic Four. The resulting chase spanned universes. The Awesome was pursued by Nihill's immense and terrifying flagship. The chase continued until they reached Earth, with both the ships emerging in the skies above. This massive and unusual sight caught the attention of the entire world. What's worse, they crash-landed in a spectacular fashion on the Las Vegas Strip in full view of the civilians and authorities. The fierce and chaotic battle between them continued even after crashing. For the first time ever, the Fantastic Four found themselves truly exposed. They were no longer hidden in labs or undergoing secret missions, but were in full public view. Meanwhile, Nihill and his insectoid warriors poured into the streets. The human world was in panic, and amid the mayhem, Reed Richards made a brutal decision. He managed to grab one of Nihill's own plasma guns and jabbed the barrel directly into his mouth. While the rest of the team fought to subdue him, this calculated action made it clear that Reed meant to end the battle. Nihill either miscalculated the consequences or was too proud to back down and couldn't properly understand what just happened. Lost in his own fury, he still activated the plasma gun. The result was immediate and final. The plasma gun exploded along with Nihill's head in a violent burst of energy. His mutilated and lifeless body crumpled to the pavement. The battle was over, and the invader from the dying universe was finally dead. However, victory for the Fantastic Four didn't come without a price. They had killed Nihill, but they had also crossed a line that was previously unimaginable. The event also proved to be a turning point in the team's history because now they were no longer just a team of scientific explorers or secret guardians. With their identities exposed, they became instant public figures. They were hailed as both heroes and killers who were caught on camera, while their existence was suddenly revealed to the world. This was a huge shock for the team members, especially Reed, who struggled with guilt and depression in the aftermath of the battle. He had always believed that science and reason had the power to solve anything. Still, it wasn't science or a formula that saved his team in the end, but his act of violence. He had to resort to violence and take a life in order to protect himself and the others. And this was nothing less than haunting to him. Even with all of his technological strength, Reed felt powerless to stop what had happened. His best friend Sue tried to rationalize it as necessary. Johnny, who was younger and more brash, cheered for their win, but was also shaken by how quickly the matter had spiraled into bloodshed. Nihill's death had closed a chapter in the early development of the Fantastic Four, but the scars lingered. Reed especially would carry the memory of the consequences for a long time, grappling with the cost of being a protector in a universe where mercy wasn't always an option. As for Nihill, he never made a return. Death is often permanent in the Ultimate Universe, and Nihill's demise was particularly clear and graphic. He couldn't escape through time loops or multiverses or clone bodies. Instead, he died in the sand and sunlight of Las Vegas, killed by his own weapon and his desperation. Yet, much like the scars he left behind, his presence lingers. Looks, goals, abilities, and personality of Nihill. Being from an insectoid race, Nihill has a terrifying insectoid appearance that radiates a lot of menace. His skeletal frame is enclosed in a biomechanical exoskeleton with dark metallic ridges and spiked protrusions. He also possesses long and clawed limbs which truly resemble the anatomy of a predatory insect, and an alien face featuring glowing red eyes and a mandible-like mouth completely devoid of human features. Every part of his body looks built for domination and survival in the harsh environment of the End Zone, making him appear more like a parasite. Nihill was actually a reinterpretation of a classic Marvel villain named Annihilus, who ruled the Negative Zone in the main continuity. But while Annihilus is often depicted as monstrous and sadistic, Nihill carries a quieter and more intellectual aura around him. His motivations were equally dangerous, but also rooted in logic and survival. Nihill is a leader who has no other choice but to fight, and this fact makes him even more dangerous. His cruelty is shaped by necessity and sharpened by the fear of oblivion. Although he was killed in the end, Physically, Nihill was very formidable, with strength rivaling that of Ben Grimm. He used massive wings to fly around toxic environments that would kill humans instantly. His massive resistances also meant that he aged very slowly, almost not at all. And of course, there was his weapons and technology, which had been stolen from hundreds of civilizations across the End Zone. Of course, Nihill is cold and calculating and often merciless, but he's driven by a world where survival of the fittest is the only rule. Unlike his Earth counterparts, he's emotionless and strategic, showing little remorse or compassion. This makes him an even more terrifying villain, not because he's mad, but because he believes his actions are justified. The End Zone is a place where entropy is won and where its inhabitants struggle not to live, but to avoid fading away. The Arthrosians were shown to be completely dependent on Nihill for survival. His ship, his army, and his will are the only things holding the fragments of their species together. This fact adds a further layer of tragedy to Nihill's character. He's not just a villain, but the final echo of a dying race. He saw the Earth as a planet thriving with life and knew he would have no place in it unless he took it by force. This also establishes him as a kind of father figure to a species clinging to their last hopes for survival. Though his screen time in the comics was short and spans just 4 issues in the Ultimate Fantastic Four, Nihill still leaves a long-lasting and strong impression. He's also not resurrected or reimagined in future arcs. He just serves his role, makes his impact, and is gone forever. Yet, his death left a profound effect on the world, blowing the Fantastic Four's cover permanently. After the incident in Las Vegas, which happened in full public view, they can't go back to secrecy. They were superheroes, but now they had to become celebrities and also targets. For some people, they were heroes, but for others, they were simply killers. The entire world was now watching because the events of the End Zone forced them to face the ethical weight of their powers for the first time. Nihill proved to be the perfect adversary in showing what happens when the fantasy of discovery collides with the reality of survival. Marvelous verdict! There's been no one like Nihill ever since. The End Zone itself would reappear in future stories, but never with the same impact. Without Nihill, its threat lost all its gravity. No other character from that dimension could carry the same presence or weight. Today, Nihill might not be counted as a major villain in the Marvel Ultimate Universe simply because his story arc was so brief, but fans still remember him as a haunting antagonist who was brilliant and powerful, but also doomed. In the end, he was defeated not because of some moral flaw, but because the world he came from was already dead and his time had already passed. He will always be remembered as the ghost of a dying world, giving his best one last time, only to be struck down by those still full of life. Unfortunately, that's all we got for you this time, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.